Hello, hello, and welcome. We're here this morning to talk about principle number 3. We're talking about the 12 principles, the codes of or principles for sacred healing, and this is number 3. There are 2 other videos for number 1 and number 2. They're short. We'll try to make this short too. So, and a warm welcome to you listening live or on the replay. And our code of principle for today is all of life happens in the field of the mind and then is reflected from the field of the mind. And we'll break that down in just a little bit. But I want to also say that if we've not yet met, I'm Laurie Morse, a 30-year practitioner of Chinese medicine and the director of the Sacred Health Academy, where we teach women how to activate and awaken her birthright, actually, of sacred health that lives in every single one of our cells. We just don't always know it. It's latent. So we go through, I guide women how to do that. And it's pretty miraculous. The results are exquisite at the level of mind, body, and spirit. So, everybody, we all want to live with energy and ease and peace and purpose, right? So that's sort of the overarching mission, if you will. So let's talk about, you know, it's we get this twisted up a little bit, I think. And so at first cause, the source of all life, creates anything. And in this case, we're talking about our system of worlds and the planet that we happen to be living on, planet Earth. And it comes out of the field of consciousness or thought. And it's interesting because in Chinese medicine, our thoughts are considered qi, and qi is a Chinese word for life force or energy, atomic energy, molecular energy, um, spirit. It's all the same, right? Spirit, matter, same thing. So thoughts are considered the most subtle form of qi, and we don't see our thoughts, right? Just like we don't see the wind. But we know when the wind is blowing and the trees are moving and swaying that there's something there, but we just can't see it with our naked eye. And so it's true for some forms of qi. Everything is qi, really. It just the difference, or what qualifies it as, the differences are it's density. So we have hand qi, we have chair qi, we have computer qi. All those forms are more dense, so we can see them with our naked eye. But the qi that pumps our blood and beats our heart, like our life force, so to speak, is a qi that we don't necessarily see. It does help to move our blood through our veins and conduct nerve impulse and pump lymph and all of that. But the qi that's doing that isn't necessarily seen with our naked eye like the wind. And it's the same idea with our thoughts. We don't necessarily see our thoughts with our naked eye, but the cascade of events goes thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And that's just sort of like how, like even the Bible says, in the beginning there was the Word. And so before the Word, there had to have been a thought. And that thought lives in this realm of consciousness that we don't necessarily see with our naked eye. So the reason that I'm even saying anything about all of this is that because when we start operating from the level of consciousness that starts with our thoughts, that then affects our feelings, and that's an instantaneous effect, by the way. And right away, and we've talked about this in other videos, right away our thoughts and our feelings create in our brain chemicals that get released that operate our physical body. And those chemicals can either be supportive and regenerative and healing, or they can be corrosive and degenerative and sort of tear our body down, contractive. And we know by the way we feel in our body which cascade of chemicals that we're initiating based on our thoughts, and then the immediate feelings that show up based on our thoughts. We can also look at how we're speaking. What are we saying about things? And if the words we're using don't make us feel light or open or easeful, if they make us feel the opposite, which is more tense and fearful, contracted, then we can say for sure that we need to go to the level of our thoughts and change some things around, right? Like we have to make decisions about how we're going to play in that field of consciousness. And then things are reflected into our life. Now, I've said this before. I'm talking about us as an individual, but we also have a collective consciousness, right? So the way things are reflected or outpictured, if you will, into the world stage, well, we're seeing right now that there's a lot of division and there's a lot of things happening that are trying to teach us what we need to know in order to change at the highest level of consciousness. And I mean, on my good days about what's happening in the world, I can regularly remind myself and bring myself back to center and say, okay, it's my job to curate and cultivate my own thoughts, words, feelings, and actions, and knowing that it contributes to the collective. On my less good days, or moments, if you will, um, I have grief and I feel pain over the things that are happening. But I also catch that as quickly as I can because I know that there's nothing impactful that I have in staying swirled up in that grief and that pain. So then I just bring myself back and I you know I take the time that it takes to connect my mind to the higher mind, the superconscious mind, the divine mind, my higher self's mind, because I know that she has a broader perspective, and that in that connection, that I actually receive ways of thinking that are more truthful. It doesn't mean things aren't still out playing and out picturing and being reflected in the state of the world, but I also can be gifted a higher truth. And that means a lot to me. I've been practicing this for a number of years, and I didn't realize how much that practice would mean to me as it does in now in this time that we're living through. So, and the other thing that I know in every cell of my being, and this is true of every true teaching, the essence of every teaching is that the purpose of having a physical experience and connecting to first cause. First cause is the higher truth, right? That the thought process and the consciousness that comes from the higher realms, if you will. And then I let that filter through my own mind and brain. Sometimes I actually see this waterfall of light that I know comes from that source of all life, kind of just coming in and seeping into my brain cells and my brain tracts and my brain waves and filling my mind. And sometimes I ask for liquid love to fill my entire nervous system. So that would be, everything in my mind and my body that is my nervous system. And I ask that it be lifted up into a higher function, so that I'm not always like being caught in landmines of fear, if you will. And anyway, let me get back to the purpose. The purpose of a life is to expand love. Like when we left the pool of consciousness and got extended as an individual extension of love, and that's the second principle. We're not separate from love. We're an extension of love. And so we have to get our minds around these truths so that we can start lining up our own thinking and our own consciousness, so that our thoughts and then our feelings and then the words we choose to speak in our own mind and out loud and the actions we take are all in alignment with this higher truth that we are an extension of love. And I just feel like never more has there been a more important time, a call to action, than now for us to start really shoring up these truths within our own mind, heart, bodies, and lives, right? And that, the reason I call that a code of principle for sacred healing, is because if we don't do that, if we're disconnected, if we've got, false beliefs going on, rattling around in our mind, whether that's at the conscious or unconscious level, if we're unwilling to bring our emotional tangles to our higher love, and that just happens in a moment, it happens in a breath, it happens by a choice and by a decision to say, oh, here's this thing that's like got me by the tail or the chest, in terms of attention, And I literally hand it to the love in my heart, and I blaze light through it, and I ask to be shown what is true about the situation. And I am never, ever left in the cold with that. I'm always given, it's ask and you shall receive is a common thing to like trust, but we have to ask. And that's a really important thing. I remember it was probably 30 years ago. I was at a friend's house and she had a sticky note on her refrigerator that just said the word ask on it. And I asked her about it. I said, she's since left the world. She's in the non-physical now. I asked her about it. I said, what is that about? And she just said, one of my teachers told me that I don't ask enough. I don't ask for the things that I want or the things that are important, or I can't remember what else she said. I just remember it just stuck with me, and I appreciate it because it helps me remember now to ask. If something's off track, then I ask for something right to show up, to be shown what's right about it. So this idea of thoughts to instantaneous feeling, and then actions and that kind of thing, is the law of cause and effect, right? There's always a cause to the effect. So if we don't like the effects in our world, in our bodies, in our relationships, in our financial affairs, in the state of the world, we must go to the cause. And the first cause, is consciousness and what we're thinking. And we have to be intentional and co-creative with our higher self. And we have to get right with what's true about first ourselves, and then about how we can affect and impact life around us, right? So we can't operate outside of this law of cause and effect, I guess is the way to say it. So, and it's always at play. It's always happening with every thought we think. And the more aware we become, the more our life, and the more we choose, what feels meaningful to us as aligned with the love that we know, each of us know, love to be in our own heart and in the world. And we have to explore that, right? You have to explore what that means. If I have come to a point where I trust that every particle of life is a particle of love, then and when I get crossways of that, then my job is to come back to center with a bit of stillness, if you will, just kind of let things kind of settle in, call on higher wisdom, and ask to be shown what I need to know about what got crossways about my alignment with love. And I'm always shown, and so will you too be if you ask, and if it, of course, comes from sincerity from your heart, right? Not from your mind, not from your ego, our ego-based mind, where we're more, there's more of an impatience and a more of a a fearful demanding from that place. But when we call forth from our heart and even demand from our heart, it's a very different response. So play with that, if you will, because it's worth your understanding the subtleties, and and connecting into that wisdom, so that you have that at any given moment. And even I say this a lot, but even practicing when things are feeling kind of smooth, because it's harder if we haven't practiced when things are smooth. It's harder to access this when things are a little shaky or wobbly, right? So everything that happens in life, being based on this law of cause and effect, and everything being a reflection of what's in our mind, but let's just talk about ourselves individually. Everything that's happening is trying to get our attention for something. And the something is returning whatever is out of alignment with love to love. That's the whole point of our life, right? If we were now I know that sounds simplistic, and oh yeah, right. Well, I know we all have, life to tend to and to take care of, and the to-do lists and the balls in the air and the bills to pay and all the things, right? But the point is to not leave love out of the picture with all of those things. The point is to bring love to all of those things, and to let love be included in all of the things that you're doing in regards to crossing things off your to-do list and paying the bills and getting the things done, right? Don't leave it out of the picture, because I almost feel like we're getting there's like a collective squeeze. There's a pressure, and the pressure is mounting. It feels like to me, and the only way out in my worldview is to continue to turn to love and to keep returning everything to love and keep returning everything to love, whether it's something in my own life, in my own heart, or it's something that triggers me in the outside world. And there's plenty of fodder there, isn't there? So if I get triggered looking in the world, then I clean that up in myself, right? I bring it back to love. So let me just see if that's everything I wanted to say. Yeah, and I guess the last piece of that is that we're in a physical body with a mind, with a feeling sense, with the capacity to use our words, and the capacity to choose the actions we take for a reason. And every the only reason is a return to love. And there's an art to that. I love that saying, the art of returning to love, because I never learned that growing up. Did you? I mean, who teaches us to return to love? Even in, religious paths or spiritual paths, it's a little bit cloudy, this principle, right? This principle, this idea of returning to love. I mean, it's kind of talked about in a big kind of overarching way, but what does that mean when it comes to the very next step I'm going to take and the very next breath you're going to take, right? Like, that matters. That's where the rubber meets the road. We're boots on the ground here. And so I happen to know that, my boots on the ground, your boots on the ground, every moment that you and I choose to turn back to love and turn back to love and turn away from fear and turn back to love and bring that fear to the heart of love and ask that fear to be taken up by love, that it really matters to the whole. It matters to the collective. The more each of us do that, the easier it becomes for more others to do it, right? That didn't make sense grammatically, but the easier it is for more and more of of others in the collective to do it. So let me know what your thoughts are about this, because it's, we could talk about it until midnight and still not, still kind of feel like we're only scratching the surface. But I'm offering these principles for sacred healing for for you to chew on them and let your own connection to your higher self help you discover more about what it means for you in your mind, body, and life and sacred healing journey, right? So, if you have anything that came up for you, I'd love to hear. I'd love to be in dialogue with you about it. Drop your comments below. And also drop the word love if you are on board with this way of this consideration, this commitment, if you will, to the source of life, which is love. Love and light, we've talked about this before. Light is the activity, and light is what carries love, and love is the essence of life. And so they need each other. They're inseparable. It's like yin and yang, masculine, feminine, night and day. Those concepts, that polarity dance are inseparable from one another. And so it serves us to actually think about and contemplate these things, because it helps us to go, oh, I get it. I get why light is so important now, because it washes love through me and in, through, and around every one of my cells, and that wakes something up in my cellular intelligence. It gives my cellular intelligence the food, the nourishment it needs to operate in my system, right? To increase the function of my organs and glands and cells and systems. Like, that's a thing. So anyway, I'll stop there. I just hope this is like landing somewhere in your mind and heart and body, and let me know if it is, as I said. And next week we'll talk about the fourth principle in the sacred healing journey. All of these are kind of not optional. It doesn't matter which order you do it, but it's important that you know them, so that you can, even if it takes the rest of your life to sort of discover what they mean to you, all good. The point is you're engaged in the experience of the principles, right? So on that lovely note, I will just wish you a love-filled week, and the best to your thought and consciousness arena um, possible that's available to you at this point in time. Okay, until next week.